You still remember the exact sound the door made when it closed? You check on it before you check your phone. You notice the tire pressure without touching the gauge. You just know. You know which drawer the keys live in. Nobody else is allowed to move them. You clean it on a Saturday morning before anyone else in the house is awake. You can tell something changed under the hood just by the way it idles. You remember the smell of that interior more clearly than you remember most conversations from that decade. You have opinions about carburetors nobody asked for. You share them anyway. You feel something specific when it is dirty, not mild annoyance, something closer to embarrassment, like showing up somewhere important with your shirt untucked. You plan the route before you drive it anywhere. Potholes avoided, gravel avoided, tight lots avoided on principle. You get uncomfortable handing someone else the keys, even someone you trust completely. It is not about the car getting damaged. It is about handing over something that feels like part of you. You have a name for it. You would never admit that to most people, but you do. You know exactly what happened to every car you owned before this one, where it went, who has it now, whether it is still running somewhere. You have never once explained why any of this matters. You just know that it does. You don't call it a hobby anymore. It stopped being one a long time ago. You feel something shift the second the engine turns over. The noise in your head gets quieter. Nobody else notices when that happens. You do. You don't argue about this anymore because it stopped being worth explaining. You don't feel behind the times because of it. You feel like the one person still paying attention. You don't need anyone to understand it. You stopped needing that years ago. You will spend 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon fixing something that saves you nothing. Time was never the currency here. Here is what people get wrong about this. They assume it is about status. A vintage car in the driveway, parked at an angle that gets noticed. They think you are performing wealth or taste or nostalgia for its own sake. That explanation is too easy. Status seekers buy new things. They buy things built to announce themselves. What they own is meant to be seen once and understood immediately. What you have kept took decades, and most of it was never meant to be seen by anyone but you. You are not chasing attention. You never were. What is actually happening goes back further than the car itself. Think about what a car represented when you were young enough for it to matter. It was not transportation. It was the first machine you ever encountered that had a personality. The steering wheel vibrated under your palm. The chrome caught the light in a way plastic never could. The engine turning over sounded like something waking up. You were not a passenger in that moment. You were a witness. Psychology calls that a formative anchor, an early sensory experience that gets locked in as safe and permanent and real. The smell of oil and rubber, the weight of a chrome handle, the exact sound an engine makes idling in a quiet driveway on a Sunday morning. These things do not just remind you of the past, they return you to it physically every time you encounter them again. That is also why you talk to it and why you noticed if someone drove it differently than you do. Assigning a personality to something mechanical is not irrational. It is the brain using the same bonding mechanisms it uses for people, aimed at something that has earned it. There is a second layer underneath all of that. The cars from that era were transparent. You could open the hood and trace every system with your own eyes. The belts, the pulleys, the carburetor, sitting there in plain view. A kid with enough curiosity could understand how the whole thing worked just by looking at it. That transparency was not only mechanical, it was psychological. The world made sense because the things in it made sense. Compare that to now. Modern systems are sealed. Financial markets, algorithms, supply chains, the phone in your pocket, black boxes, all of them. You cannot see how any of it works, and you were never meant to. There is research on this. When people believe they can understand and influence their environment, their baseline anxiety drops. When they cannot, it rises, even with nothing outwardly threatening in front of them. Most of adult life has quietly removed the visible logic from almost everything you depend on. That is what makes handing someone the keys feel different than it should. It is not about trust. It is about exposing the one part of your world that still makes sense to you. The car's the opposite of all of that. When you spend an afternoon adjusting the timing on something built in 1969, you are not just fixing a machine. You are stepping into a version of the world where effort and outcome are still directly connected, where the problem has a location, where fixing something is actually possible. That experience has become rare enough that people will spend real money and real time just to recreate it. There's a social layer to this too, one that rarely gets mentioned. The culture built around these machines when they were new was a culture of shared physical space, parking lots that put you in view of the street, drives that ended somewhere with other people standing around an open hood, a conversation that started because two strangers happened to notice the same engine sound. That kind of unplanned physical encounter has become structurally rare. Car culture preserves a piece of it. It is not really about the cars. It is about what the cars use to make possible. And underneath all of it sits something quieter than any of that. When you are alone behind the wheel, something changes. The mind has just enough to do that it stops overthinking, without ever tipping into stress. That is not the road calming you down. It is what the road asks of you. For a man who lives mostly in his own head, it is one of the only places the noise actually stops. There's a term for how you are spending yourself here. Psychologists call it emotional economy, the way a person chooses where their limited attention and energy actually go, regardless of what they claim to value out loud. You do not have unlimited hours or unlimited patience. You have decided, without ever saying it directly, that this earns both. That is not a small decision. It is one of the clearest signals of what a man has consolidated his identity around in this stage of his life. People will tell you this is nostalgia, and they will say it like it is a weakness, a retreat, a soft inability to deal with the present. That framing is wrong. Research out of the University of Southampton found that people who engage in nostalgic recall do not become withdrawn. They become more socially connected, more optimistic about what is ahead, more grounded in who they actually are. Nostalgia is not a backward pull, it is a bridge. It stabilizes identity when everything else keeps shifting under you. You are not a man who is stuck in the past because something is wrong. You are a man who protects one piece of the world that still makes sense because you already know exactly how rare that has become. The steel panels rust the way steel is supposed to rust, honestly, out in the open, not failing quietly behind a screen. The engine tightens as it warms instead of degrading without warning. Somebody built this thing believing it would still be running decades later. You believe them. You still do. The garage light goes off, the cover goes back over it, the same way it does every week. And for one more week, something in your life still runs exactly the way it is supposed to.